There's something about airports at dawn that makes the world feel suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. I've never been comfortable with flying, not the mechanics of it. I understand lift and thrust well enough. It's the smallness of it that troubles me. The way we fold ourselves into rows, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, breathing the same recycled air, pretending we're not all a little afraid of the same things. But that morning, I had no choice. My sister was sick. The kind of sick that makes phone calls feel urgent and silences stretch too long. So I found myself at gate 17, waiting for a flight I didn't want to take, to have a conversation I wasn't ready for. The terminal was half empty. Early morning travelers moved like ghosts through the fluorescent light. Businessmen in wrinkled suits, families herding sleepy children, a young couple holding hands as if touch alone could keep them tethered to something solid. I held my coffee with both hands. It was already lukewarm, but the weight of it felt necessary, grounding. That's when I first heard the crying. Not the healthy wail of a tired infant, but something thinner, more fragile. The sound of a child who'd been crying so long that exhaustion was starting to win over distress. I looked up. 2 rows over sat a young mother, maybe 30, maybe younger. She wore that particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with hours and everything to do with weight. Her hair was pulled back in a hasty knot. Her sweater had a stain near the collar. She held a little boy against her chest, maybe 3 years old, his face red and swollen with tears. She was rocking him, whispering something I couldn't hear. But nothing was working. Other passengers were starting to notice, some with sympathy, most with irritation. I saw a man in a business suit glance at his watch, then at the gate agent, as if timing might somehow hurry the boarding process and separate him from the noise. I looked away. It felt invasive to watch, like witnessing something too private for this public space. But I kept listening, and I wondered, as I always wonder when I see young mothers alone with crying children, where the help was, where the village we always talk about had gone. They called our section to board. I gathered my bag and moved toward the line, relieved to be doing something, anything that felt like progress. The mother stood too, trying to gather a diaper bag, a backpack, a stuffed animal that kept falling, all while holding her sobbing son. She looked like she might cry herself, that particular desperation of being alone in a crowd. I wanted to help, but I didn't know how. I stood there, frozen in that modern paralysis, where we're not sure what's appropriate anymore, what's welcomed, what's intrusion. So I did nothing. And I've thought about that moment more times than I can count. We shuffled down the jet bridge. The crying grew louder, amplified by metal walls and low ceilings. Behind me, I heard a woman mutter something about some people and shouldn't fly with children. Her companion made a sound of agreement. I felt anger flash hot in my chest. But I said nothing. I just kept walking. The boy's cries had words in them now, stretched thin and desperate. "Hurts," he kept saying. "Hurts, hurts, hurts." An ear infection, maybe. Or just the ordinary, unbearable discomfort of being small and sick and not understanding why the world feels wrong. I found my seat, 14C, a middle seat between 2 strangers who were already settling in with newspapers and earbuds. I watched as the mother made her way down the aisle, the little boy still crying, now beginning to thrash weakly in her arms. She stopped at row 3, first class. I watched a businessman look up from his phone. He was older, maybe mid-50s, gray at the temples, expensive watch, the kind of watch that says someone has arrived, has made it, has earned the extra legroom and the warm nuts and the faster path through security. He looked at the mother, at the crying child, at the exhaustion written in every line of her body, and I expected what we all expected. I expected him to look away, to put his earbuds in, to raise the armrest that separated his space from hers like a small civil boundary. But he didn't do any of those things. Instead, he stood up. He gathered his leather briefcase, his jacket, his Wall Street journal, and he stepped into the aisle. "Excuse me," he said, and his voice was so gentle that even from 5 rows back, I could hear the kindness in it. "Your little one seems like he needs more space than I do. Would you two like to sit here? I'd be happy to take your seat." The mother stared at him. For a moment, I don't think she understood. We don't expect strangers to move toward discomfort, to choose it, to offer up something valuable for nothing in return. I have a middle seat in economy," she said, as if apologizing for the inadequacy of what she could offer him. "That's perfectly fine," he said. "I can sit anywhere." She started to cry then, not the same tears as her son, but the kind that come when someone sees you, really sees you, in a moment when you felt most invisible. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. He has an ear infection, and I'm trying to get home to my husband, and You don't have to explain," the businessman said. "Just take care of your boy." They switched seats. The businessman took his things and moved back through the cabin. When he passed my row, I caught a glimpse of his face. There was no performance in it. No, "look what a good person I am" smile, just quiet determination. He found the mother's old seat, 28B, wedged between 2 large men who'd already claimed both armrests, and he settled in without complaint. The flight attendants closed the cabin door. The engines began their familiar build. I watched the mother in first class lean back against the wide leather seat, her son still crying but softer now, his body beginning to relax as she could finally stretch out, could finally hold him properly without elbows and seat backs digging into her spine. She kissed the top of his head, over and over, the way you do when relief and love and gratitude all tangle together into something too big for words. I thought about kindness then, how we talk about it in grand terms, charity, philanthropy, changing the world. But really it's this. It's making yourself smaller so someone else has room to breathe. The plane took off. Below us, the city became a pattern of light and shadow, geometry and intention. We rose through clouds, and for a moment, everything was white and undefined. I thought about my sister, about the hospital room waiting for me, about how scared I was to see her reduced, to witness what illness does to the people we love, to feel helpless in the presence of suffering. I wondered if that's what had stopped me from helping the mother in the terminal. Not lack of kindness, but fear. Fear of inadequacy. Fear that whatever I offered wouldn't be enough. So I offered nothing. The businessman sat 3 rows behind me now. I couldn't see him, but I kept thinking about him, wondering what had made him different, what had given him the courage, if courage is even the right word, to simply stand up and do something. Maybe it wasn't courage at all. Maybe it was just practice. Maybe he'd learned, somewhere along the way, that comfort given away doesn't diminish you. About an hour into the flight, I got up to use the restroom. As I walked back to my seat, I passed the mother in first class. She was asleep finally. Her son lay across her lap, also sleeping, his face still blotchy but peaceful now. The flight attendant had brought her a blanket, and it was tucked carefully around both of them. I felt something crack open in my chest. How long had she been carrying that weight alone? How many days of crying, of fevers, of trying to comfort a sick child while also keeping the world running, the bills paid, the appointments made, the semblance of normal maintained. And for 2 hours, because of one man's willingness to be uncomfortable, she could rest. I returned to my seat. The woman next to me was reading a book, one of those thick paperbacks with raised gold lettering. She'd been the one who'd complained earlier, in the boarding line, about some people. I wondered if she'd noticed the exchange, if she'd seen what happened, if it had changed anything about how she moved through the world. Probably not. Most of us miss these moments entirely. They're too quiet, too small. They don't make noise, but they matter. God, they matter. I thought about all the times I'd been the businessman in reverse, all the times I'd protected my space, my comfort, my preference for silence and order, all the times I'd looked away. It's easier, isn't it? To pretend we don't see the need around us, to tell ourselves that it's not our responsibility, that someone else will help, that we have our own burdens to carry. And we do. We all do. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that we carry them anyway. And sometimes, when we're lucky, when we're brave, we make room to carry a little more. We began our descent into Charlotte. The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, asking us to return seats and tray tables to their upright positions, to stow our belongings, to prepare for arrival. I watched the mother stir awake. For a moment, she looked confused, disoriented. Then she looked down at her sleeping son, and I saw her remember the kindness, the exchange, the gift of rest. She held him closer, and even from rows away, I could see her lips move. A prayer, maybe, or just gratitude spoken to no one and everyone. The businessman was gathering his things now. I watched him fold his newspaper neatly, zip up his briefcase, straighten his collar, as if the last 2 hours crammed in a middle seat hadn't happened at all. But they had happened, and something about that mattered. We landed smoothly. The plane taxied to the gate. Everyone stood immediately, that strange modern urgency to be first to stand and wait in the aisle. Everyone except the mother. She stayed seated, letting the chaos move around her, protecting her sleeping child from the surge of bodies and bags. When the aisle finally cleared, she stood carefully, lifting her son onto her shoulder. He didn't wake, just curled into her neck, trusting in that complete way children have before the world teaches them caution. She made her way forward. As she passed the businessman's old seat, now occupied by a teenager with headphones, she stopped. She looked back, scanning the deplaning passengers till she found him. He was waiting his turn in the aisle, 3 rows back, patient and unremarkable. Their eyes met. She mouthed something. "Thank you." Or maybe "God bless you." I couldn't hear, but he nodded. Just once. A simple acknowledgement between two humans who'd witnessed each other's humanity. Then she turned and walked off the plane. I followed the crowd into the terminal. My carry-on felt heavier than it had when I'd boarded. Or maybe I felt heavier, weighed down by recognition, by the uncomfortable knowledge that I hadn't been the businessman, that I probably wouldn't be tomorrow. That courage and kindness are muscles, and mine had atrophied from disuse. In the terminal, I saw the mother again. She was standing near the windows, her son still asleep on her shoulder, her phone pressed to her ear. She was smiling, crying a little too. "We're here," she was saying. "We're okay. Someone helped us. I can't wait to tell you about it." I kept walking. I had my own call to make, my own person to get to. But I thought about what she'd said. Someone helped us. Not a businessman in first, Class gave up his seat. Not a rich man showed charity. Just someone helped, because that's what it was, stripped of performance and transaction and social media moments. It was one person seeing another person's need and choosing in that moment not to look away. I found a quiet corner near my next gate and called my sister. She answered on the second ring, her voice thin but there. "I'm here," I told her. "I'm coming." "I know," she said. "I've been waiting." And I thought about that word, waiting. How much of life is spent waiting for help, for healing, for someone to see that we're struggling and offer a hand. Sometimes that help never comes. Sometimes we carry our burdens alone, from gate to gate, from day to day, doing the best we can with what we have. But sometimes, rarely, preciously, unexpectedly, someone stands up, not because they have to, not because there's a reward or recognition, just because they can. And because, in that moment, they choose to believe that someone else's comfort matters as much as their own. I never learned the businessman's name. I never saw him again after that flight. For all I know, he's forgotten the entire incident by now. Another Tuesday, another flight, another ordinary act in an ordinary life. But I haven't forgotten. I think about him sometimes, when I'm faced with my own small choices. When I see someone struggling with bags in a doorway. When a stranger in line looks like they're about to break. When my comfort and someone else's need occupy the same space, and I have to decide which one wins. I think about him, and I try to stand up. I don't always manage it. More often than I'd like to admit, I stay seated. I protect my space. I look away. I tell myself that it's not my responsibility, that I have enough to carry, that surely someone else will help. But on good days, on brave days, I remember that flight. I remember the mother's face when kindness appeared where she expected judgment. I remember her sons crying, softening into sleep. I remember the quiet dignity of a man who gave up something comfortable because someone else needed it more. And I understand that this is how the world changes. Not through grand gestures or viral moments or campaigns and causes, though those matter too. It changes in the small surrenders, in the ordinary inconveniences we accept on behalf of someone we'll never see again, in the space we make when making space costs us something. My sister recovered, slowly, painfully, but she recovered. And in those long weeks of hospital rooms and medications and fear, I learned what the mother on the plane probably already knew, that healing requires witnesses. That sometimes the only thing that makes suffering bearable is the presence of someone who chooses to stay close to it. I tried to be that person for my sister, to show up, to sit still, to make myself uncomfortable so she didn't have to be alone in her discomfort. I don't know if I did it well. I don't know if I was the businessman or just someone who tried and fell short. But I tried. And maybe that's the beginning. Maybe kindness isn't about being good enough or doing enough. Maybe it's about being willing to be insufficient and showing up anyway. About standing when standing is inconvenient. About seeing someone else's need and deciding, for this moment at least, that it matters. I still fly when I have to. I still don't love it. But I pay attention now in ways I didn't before. I watch for the overwhelmed parents, the elderly passengers struggling with overhead bins, the anxious first-time travelers who don't know where they're going. I watch for the moments when someone needs room and no one is making any. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, I stand up. I give my seat to someone who needs it more. I offer to hold a baby while a parent folds a stroller. I help lift a bag, open a door, slow down when the world is rushing. These aren't grand acts. No one records them. No one shares them. They don't go viral. But somewhere, in some small way, they matter. To the person who receives them, yes, but also to me, to who I'm trying to become. Because the truth is, we're all the mother sometimes. Exhausted, alone, carrying more than we thought we could carry, wondering if anyone sees us at all. And we're all the businessman sometimes. Comfortable, separate, choosing between our space and someone else's need. The only question is which one we become in any given moment. The fire's burning low now. Outside, night has settled in for good. The world is quiet in that particular way it gets when everyone has gone home, when the day's demands have been met or postponed, when there's nothing left to do but rest. I think I'll stay here a little longer, just to sit with this memory, this small story about a moment on a plane that no one but a handful of passengers even witnessed. But it was real. The kindness was real. And the change it made in one mother's morning, in my understanding of what it means to help, that was real too. Sometimes the smallest acts are the ones that stay with us longest. The quiet surrenders, the unremarkable choices, the moment someone stood when they could have stayed seated. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. Maybe that's everything. There's a kind of peace in knowing that, in understanding that we don't have to save the world, or fix everything, or be perfect in our compassion. We just have to see someone who's struggling, and choose, for that moment, not to look away. The rest will follow, or it won't. But at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we stood up.